The day Rebecca Ashford stepped off the dusty stagecoach in Enid, Oklahoma Territory, in the spring of 1898. She carried nothing but a worn leather satchel, a letter of agreement folded in her coat pocket, and a voice that could make angels weep with envy. The journey from Philadelphia had taken 2 weeks, and every mile westward had felt like shedding another layer of her old life. The cramped boarding house where she had sung for pennies, the disapproving looks from church ladies who thought a woman performing publicly was indecent, the hollow ache of watching her younger siblings go hungry while their father drank away his wages. All of it faded with each revolution of the stagecoach wheels. Now she stood on the wooden platform, squinting against the brilliant afternoon sun, her dark auburn hair already escaping its careful pins from the wind that seemed to blow constantly across these endless plains. The town sprawled before her, newer than she had expected, with fresh-cut lumber still pale on many buildings. Horses lined the hitching posts along the main street, and somewhere a blacksmith's hammer rang out a steady rhythm. "Miss Hartley?" A gruff voice made her turn. The man approaching was not what she had expected. His letters had been cordial but practical, outlining what he could offer a wife: a working ranch, a solid house, respectability and security. She had imagined someone older, perhaps weathered and stern. Instead, she found herself looking at a man who could not be much past 30, tall and lean with sun-darkened skin, and eyes the color of creek water in summer. He removed his hat, revealing brown hair that was too long by Eastern standards, but seemed fitting here. "I am Rebecca Hartley," she said, proud that her voice did not waver. "You must be Mr. Ashford." "Randall," he said, and something in his expression softened. "I reckon if we are getting married, you should call me by my given name." Rebecca nodded, suddenly aware of how real this was becoming. She had agreed to marry a stranger and move halfway across the country. The reality of it pressed against her chest like a weight. "Your journey was well, I hope?" Randall asked, reaching for her satchel. His hands were work-roughened, she noticed, with old rope scars across the palms. "Long," she admitted, "but I am here now. That you are." He gestured toward a wagon hitched nearby. "My ranch is about 5 miles out. We can go to the preacher now if you would like, or wait until tomorrow if you need time to rest." Rebecca considered. Every practical bone in her body screamed that she should wait, should at least spend a night in town where she could change her mind if needed. But she had not come this far to turn coward now. "Today would be fine," she said. "I gave you my word and I intend to keep it." Something flickered in his eyes, approval perhaps, or relief. "The preacher lives just there," he said, pointing to a modest white building with a small cross atop it. "It will not be fancy." "I did not come here expecting fancy," Rebecca said truthfully. The ceremony was brief and businesslike, witnessed by the preacher's wife and a shopkeeper who happened to be passing by. Rebecca wore her traveling dress, now dusty from the road, and Randall stood beside her smelling of honest sweat and horse and leather. When the preacher pronounced them married, Randall did not kiss her, just offered his arm formally and led her back to the wagon. The ride to the ranch gave Rebecca her first real look at this new land. The prairie stretched in all directions, covered in new spring grass that rippled like water in the wind. Wildflowers dotted the landscape in unexpected bursts of color. The sky seemed impossibly large, unmarked by the buildings and smoke she had known all her life. "It is different from what you are used to," Randall said. It was not a question. "Very different," Rebecca agreed, "but not unpleasant." "The loneliness gets to some women," he said carefully. "The nearest neighbor is 3 miles east. Town is 5 miles. In winter, we might not make it in for weeks at a time if the snow comes heavy." "I am not afraid of solitude," Rebecca said. I am more afraid of hunger and cold and having no future. You offered me those things in your letters, security and a home. I intend to uphold my end of our agreement." "Our agreement," Randall repeated, and something in his tone made her glance at him. His jaw was tight, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "Yes, that is what this is." The ranch, when they arrived, was more substantial than she had dared hope. The house was built of solid timber with a covered porch and real glass windows. A barn stood nearby, well maintained, and she could see cattle dotting the pasture beyond. It was clear this was a working operation, not the desperate homestead of a man who could find no other way to get a wife. "Why did you send for a mail-order bride?" The question escaped before Rebecca could stop it. "You clearly have means. You could have courted someone here." Randall helped her down from the wagon, his hands firm on her waist. "The women here are spoken for, mostly. And I do not have much skill with pretty words and courtship dances." Seemed more honest this way, putting it in writing what I could offer and what I needed in return. "What do you need in return?" Rebecca asked. "Your letters mentioned companionship and someone to manage the household. But there must be more to it than that." He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw something in his expression she could not quite read. "I am tired of being alone," he said finally. "This is a hard land, and it helps to have someone to share it with. Someone to talk to at the end of a long day. Someone to care about and to care about me in return, even if it starts as just an agreement." The honesty of it struck her. "That seems fair," she said quietly. He showed her through the house, which was clean but sparse in the way of a man living alone. The main room had a stone fireplace, a table with 4 chairs, and a rocking chair by the window. The kitchen was functional with a good iron stove. There were 2 bedrooms, and Randall gestured to the larger one. "This will be yours," he said. "I will take the smaller room. When you are ready, if you are ready, we can discuss other arrangements, but I will not force anything on you. That is not why I wanted a wife." Rebecca felt something tight in her chest loosen. She had heard stories, whispered warnings about men who saw mail-order brides as property they had purchased. "Thank you," she said, and meant it. That first night, Rebecca lay in the unfamiliar bed and listened to the sounds of this new place. The wind against the windows, cattle lowing in the distance, the creak of the house settling, and somewhere beyond her door, the quiet movements of the stranger who was now her husband. She woke before dawn from habit, years of rising early to help with her siblings ingrained in her bones. She dressed quickly and made her way to the kitchen, determined to prove her worth. By the time Randall emerged from his room, she had coffee brewing and was mixing biscuit dough. He stopped in the doorway, surprise clear on his face. "You did not need to do this." "You are working the ranch," Rebecca said. "The least I can do is make sure you have a proper breakfast." They ate in silence, neither quite sure how to begin the business of being married. But as Randall prepared to head out for the day's work, he paused at the door. "If you feel inclined, there is a vegetable garden plot on the south side of the house. The previous owner started it, but I have not had time to maintain it properly, and there are chickens in the coop that need tending." "I can do that," Rebecca said, and Rebecca, he met her eyes. "Thank you for the breakfast. It has been a long time since I had a meal that tasted like someone cared about making it." The words stayed with her through the morning as she explored her new domain. She found the garden plot overrun with weeds but salvageable. The chicken coop housed 8 hens and a proud rooster who eyed her with suspicion. In the barn, she discovered a milk cow and 2 horses, all clearly well cared for. The work was different from what she had known in the city, but not unwelcome. There was something honest about it, tangible results from effort expended. By midday, she had cleared half the garden and collected eggs and was planning meals in her head. It was while she was hanging laundry on the line Randall had strung between two posts that she began to hum. Just a simple melody at first, one of the old songs her mother used to sing. But then the words came, flowing out across the empty prairie, and she realized how much she had missed this in Philadelphia. She had sung in taverns and at church socials, anywhere that would pay her a few coins. Her voice was her one true gift, pure and clear with a range that had made people stop and listen. But it had also made her a target for gossip and unwanted attention. Here, alone under the vast sky, she could sing freely without judgment. She did not hear Randall return for lunch until he spoke from behind her. That was beautiful. Rebecca spun around, heat flooding her cheeks. "I apologize. I did not mean to disturb your work." "Disturb?" He shook his head. "I heard you from the north pasture. I thought maybe the angels had descended for a visit." He looked embarrassed by his own words. "That probably sounds foolish." "No," Rebecca said softly. "That is one of the kindest things anyone has said about my singing." "You have training?" Randall asked. "Some. A music teacher at the church gave me lessons in exchange for helping with her children. But mostly I just learned by doing, singing wherever people would pay to listen." "You sang in public." There was no judgment in his voice, just curiosity. "I had to help support my family," Rebecca explained. "My father, he could not always be relied upon. My mother died when I was 16 and there were 4 younger children to feed. Singing brought in money." Randall nodded slowly. "That took courage. I know some people look down on women performing." "They do," Rebecca agreed. "But I would rather face disapproval than watch my siblings starve." "Your siblings," Randall said. "Are they provided for now?" "My father found steady work finally, and the 2 oldest are working now as well. They will manage." She did not mention how much it had hurt to leave them, or how her father had barely looked at her when she announced her plans. They went inside for lunch, and the conversation came easier this time. Randall told her about the ranch, how he had built it from nothing over the past 7 years. He had come to Oklahoma Territory right after the land run of 1889, staking his claim and working himself nearly to death to make it profitable. "I always thought I would have a family by now," he admitted. "A house full of children, someone to leave this to." But the years kept passing and I kept working, and before I knew it, I was 32 and alone. 32 is not old, Rebecca said. "Maybe not, but it is old to have nothing but land and cattle to your name." He looked at her. "What about you? You must have had suitors back east." Rebecca thought of the men who had propositioned her after performances, offers that had nothing to do with marriage. "None that were suitable," she said carefully. "And at 24, I was becoming an inconvenience to my family, an unmarried daughter still at home. When I saw your advertisement, it seemed like an opportunity for both of us." "An opportunity," Randall repeated. "I suppose that is what it is." But over the following days and weeks, it began to feel like something more. They fell into a rhythm like 2 dancers learning the same steps. Randall rose before dawn to tend the cattle and horses. Rebecca managed the house and garden, cooked meals, and slowly made the place feel more like a home. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch and talk about their days, and sometimes Rebecca would sing. The first time she sang after dinner, Randall had been repairing a bridle. Her voice drifted out across the prairie, a ballad about lost love and longing, and when she finished, she found him watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. "You could have been famous," he said. "With a voice like that." "Maybe," Rebecca said, "but fame does not put food on the table or keep you warm at night. This is better." "Is it?" Randall asked. "Do you truly think so, or are you just making the best of a situation?" Rebecca considered the question honestly. "Both, perhaps." "But is that not what life is? Making the best of situations and finding happiness where you can. I suppose so, Randall said. He went back to his bridal, but something had shifted between them. A month after her arrival, Rebecca was gathering eggs when she heard horses approaching. She straightened, shading her eyes against the sun, and saw 4 riders coming up the road. Randall was in the south pasture, too far to call easily. The men who dismounted were rough-looking, unshaven and dusty from travel. The tallest one tipped his hat to her with exaggerated courtesy. "Morning, madam. Your husband about. He is working," Rebecca said, keeping her voice steady. "Can I help you with something? We heard tell he has some fine horses. Thought we might discuss a purchase." Something about the way he said it made Rebecca's instincts prickle with warning. "You will need to come back another time when he is available to discuss business. We are here now," another man said, already heading toward the barn. "That is private property," Rebecca said sharply. "You have no right." The tall man's false courtesy dropped. "You are new here, ain't you?" "Fresh off the stage from back east. Let me tell you how things work out here, lady. We ask nice first, but we do not need permission. You do on my land." Randall's voice cut through the tension. Rebecca had not heard him approach, but there he was, rifle held casually but ready. "The lady told you to come back another time. I suggest you listen." The 4 men exchanged glances. The tall one forced a laugh. "No offense meant, Ashford, just looking to do some business. My horses are not for sale. Not to you, not now, not ever. Ride on." There was a moment when it could have gone either way. Then the tall man shrugged and mounted up. "Suit yourself. Though you might find having neighbors who like you is worth more than a few horses." They rode off, and Rebecca released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Randall waited until they were out of sight before lowering the rifle. "Are you all right?" he asked. "Yes, just startled. Who were they?" "Drifters, most likely. Though that tall one, I have heard talk about him in town. Part of a group that has been causing trouble, running stock off from smaller ranches, intimidating homesteaders. I thought they had moved on." "Should we report them to the law?" Randall laughed, but there was no humor in it. "There is a marshal in Enid, but he has a whole territory to cover. By the time he could get out here, if he even bothered, those men will be long gone. Out here, you mostly handle your own problems." The incident left Rebecca shaken, not from fear but from the sudden reminder of how isolated they were. That night, she lay awake listening to every creak and rustle, imagining threats in every shadow. The next morning, Randall did something unexpected. After breakfast, instead of heading out to work, he retrieved 2 pistols and a box of ammunition. "Come with me," he said. He led her out behind the barn, where he set up a row of tin cans on fence posts. "You need to know how to protect yourself," he said. "I will not always be close enough to help." Rebecca had never fired a gun in her life, but she learned that morning, flinching at the first few shots until Randall showed her how to breathe through it, how to sight down the barrel, how to squeeze rather than pull the trigger. By the time the sun was high, she could hit 3 out of 5 cans. "That will do," Randall said with approval. "Keep this one." He handed her one of the pistols. "Keep it in the house where you can reach it if needed." "Do you think they will come back?" Rebecca asked. "Maybe, maybe not. But I sleep better knowing you can defend yourself." The shooting lessons became a regular occurrence, and Rebecca found she liked the sense of competence it gave her. She was not helpless, not dependent solely on Randall's presence for safety. As spring turned toward summer, the ranch bloomed with life. The garden produced more vegetables than they could eat, so Rebecca learned to can and preserve. The cattle multiplied, and Randall hired 2 hands to help with the work, young men from town who were respectful and called her Madam. And every evening, unless weather drove them inside, Rebecca sang. Sometimes old hymns her mother had taught her. Sometimes ballads she had learned in Philadelphia. Sometimes songs she made up, simple melodies about the prairie and the sky and the strange new life she was building. Randall never asked her to sing, but she could tell he listened. The way he would grow still at his work, the way his expression would soften. Once, she caught him with his eyes closed, just absorbing the sound, and something in her chest tightened with an emotion she was not quite ready to name. It was in early July when everything changed. Rebecca had been at the ranch for 3 months, and she had come to think of it as home. The house bore her touches now, curtains she had sewn hanging in the windows, flowers from her garden in jars on the table, the smell of fresh bread regularly filling the kitchen. She was kneading dough when Randall came in looking troubled. "I need to go into town," he said. "There is a meeting about those drifters. They have been hitting ranches to the south, running off stock. Some of the men want to form a group to deal with it." "Will you be safe?" Rebecca asked. "It is just talk for now, planning, but I might be late getting back." He hesitated. "Will you be all right here alone?" "I have the pistol," Rebecca reminded him, "and the hands are in the bunkhouse if I need help." Still, he lingered. "Rebecca, I want you to know if anything were to happen to me, the ranch is in your name as well now. I had the papers drawn up last week. You would not be left destitute." The words hung between them, weighted with meaning. "Nothing is going to happen to you," Rebecca said firmly, "but thank you for thinking of that." He reached out as if to touch her face, then seemed to think better of it. "I will be back as soon as I can." After he left, Rebecca tried to lose herself in work, but unease prickled at her. She baked bread and weeded the garden and fed the chickens, but her mind kept wandering to what might be happening in town. Evening came, and Randall did not return. She fed herself and the ranch hands, then sat on the porch as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Without thinking about it, she began to sing, a wordless melody that matched the colors above. She did not hear the horse until it was nearly at the porch. Her hand went to the pistol at her waist as she stood, but it was Randall, riding hard and alone. He dismounted in a rush. "Get inside and pack what you can carry. We need to leave." "What? Why?" "Those drifters, they are coming here tonight. Someone in town has been feeding them information, telling them which ranches are easiest targets. They know I rode in alone, know you are here with just 2 green hands for protection." He was already moving toward the house. "We can go to town. Stay there until the marshal can handle this." "No," Rebecca said. Randall stopped. "What? No, this is our home. I will not be driven out of it by criminals." "Rebecca, there could be a dozen of them. I cannot hold that many off." "Then we get help. Send one of the hands to the neighbors, to anyone who will come, but we do not run." "You could be hurt. You could be killed." "So could you." Rebecca met his eyes. "You said this land is hard and it helps to have someone to share it with, someone to care about. I care about you, Randall. I care about this place we have built together. I will not abandon it without a fight." Something fierce and bright flashed in his expression. "You are certain?" "I am certain." He grabbed her then, pulled her close, and kissed her with an urgency that took her breath away. When they broke apart, he was breathing hard. "I have wanted to do that since the day you stepped off that stage," he said. "But I thought you needed time, thought you saw me as just part of an agreement." "Maybe at first," Rebecca admitted, "but not anymore, not for a long time now." "When this is over," Randall said, "we need to talk about making this a real marriage, if you are willing." "I am willing," Rebecca said. "Now tell me what we need to do." They worked quickly. Randall sent one hand racing to the nearest neighbor, a rancher named Simmons who had a reputation for toughness. The other hand he positioned in the barn with a rifle. Rebecca he wanted in the house, but she refused. "I can shoot," she said. "You taught me. Put me where I am useful." So he positioned her upstairs at the bedroom window with a clear view of the approach road. He took the downstairs windows himself. And then they waited as the sun sank below the horizon and darkness crept across the prairie. They came just after full dark, 8 riders moving in a loose group up the road. Randall called out from the porch, his voice carrying in the still air. "That is far enough. Turn around and ride out." The tall man from before laughed. "Ashford, you got to know you cannot win this. We just want the horses and maybe anything else of value you got. Nobody needs to get hurt." "I said turn around." "Cannot do that." The tall man signaled and 2 riders split off, circling toward the barn. Randall fired, a warning shot that kicked up dust in front of them. The riders pulled up short. "The next one will not be a warning," Randall called. "You got yourself a feisty little bride, I hear," the tall man called. "Maybe we will take her too, teach you about trying to be a hero." That was when Rebecca fired, and her shot was not a warning. It took the tall man's hat clean off his head. The shocked silence that followed was profound. "The lady said no," Rebecca called down. "I suggest you listen." Chaos erupted. The drifters scattered, some dismounting to take cover, others firing wildly at the house. Glass shattered in the parlor window. From the barn, the ranch hand opened fire, and one of the drifters cried out and fell from his horse. It was mayhem and noise and the acrid smell of gunpowder. Rebecca fired at movement, not trying to kill but to keep them back, to make them think twice about rushing the house. Beside her, one of the windows exploded inward and she ducked as splinters rained down. Then, from the darkness to the east, more gunfire erupted. Reinforcements, Rebecca realized. The neighbors had come. The drifters, caught between 2 forces, broke and ran. Within minutes, the shooting stopped, and men on horseback were pursuing the fleeing criminals across the prairie. Rebecca's hands were shaking as she lowered the pistol. Downstairs, she heard Randall calling her name and she rushed down the stairs into his arms. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, running his hands over her as if checking for injuries. "No, I am fine. You did well. You kept them from rushing the house." The neighbors came in then, 5 men from surrounding ranches who had dropped everything to help. They helped secure the 2 drifters they had caught, one wounded and one who had been thrown from his horse. The marshal would be sent for in the morning. It was nearly midnight before everyone left, and Rebecca and Randall were alone again in their damaged house. They stood in the parlor, looking at the broken windows and bullet holes in the walls, and suddenly Rebecca started to laugh. "What is funny?" Randall asked, bewildered. "I spent 3 months worrying about whether I made the right decision coming here, whether this marriage would work, whether I belonged in this wild place. And tonight, I stood upstairs and shot at criminals to defend it. I think I have my answer." Randall pulled her close, and this time when he kissed her, there was no urgency, just tenderness and promise. "I love you," he said against her hair. "I think I started falling the moment you agreed to marry me that first day without waiting, showing more courage than I knew a person could have." "I love you too," Rebecca said. "Though it took me longer to realize it. I kept thinking of it as an agreement, a practical arrangement, but somewhere along the way it became real." They moved Rebecca's belongings into the larger bedroom that night, and for the first time, they shared a bed as true husband and wife. In the darkness, with the night breeze blowing through the broken windows they would repair tomorrow, they learned each other's bodies with gentle exploration and whispered words of love. The next morning brought a flurry of activity. The marshal arrived from town with deputies, took the captured men into custody, and assured them the rest of the gang was being pursued. Neighbors came by to help repair the damage, and by evening the windows were boarded until new glass could be ordered from Wichita. Life settled back into its rhythm, but everything was different now. Randall no longer held back his affection, stealing kisses when he came in for meals, holding Rebecca close on the porch in the evenings. And Rebecca sang more freely than ever, not just for the joy of it, but because she was happy in a way she had never been before. Summer turned to fall, and with it came the first signs that Rebecca was with child. She told Randall one evening in October as they sat by the fire, his hand going immediately to her still flat stomach with wonder. "A baby," he said softly. "Our baby." "Are you happy?" Rebecca asked, though she could see the answer in his eyes. "I am beyond happy. I am blessed." The pregnancy was not easy. Rebecca was sick most mornings, and the isolation she had claimed not to fear became harder as her body changed. But Randall was attentive, insisting she rest, taking over more of the household tasks despite his ranch work. It was during this time that Rebecca taught him to sing. Simple songs at first, sung together while she kneaded bread or peeled vegetables. He had a decent voice, untrained but true, and he seemed to take joy in making music with her. "I never sang much before you came," he admitted. "Seemed pointless out here alone, but now it feels like it means something." Winter came early and hard that year. By November, the snow was deep, and travel to town became impossible for weeks at a time. But they were prepared with plenty of supplies, and the house was warm and tight against the cold. It was a strange, sweet time. Isolated from the world, they created their own small universe. They talked for hours, sharing stories from their pasts, dreams for the future. They read aloud from the few books they owned. And they sang, filling the little house with music that kept the darkness at bay. Christmas came, and though they could not go to church or share it with neighbors, they made their own celebration. Randall had cut a small evergreen and brought it inside, and Rebecca decorated it with strings of dried berries and bits of cloth. They exchanged simple gifts, a carved wooden comb he had made for her, a pair of warm socks she had knitted for him. "I wish I could give you more," Randall said. "You have given me everything that matters," Rebecca replied. "A home, safety, love, and soon a family. What more could I possibly want?" The baby came in late March, when the snow was finally beginning to melt and the first hints of green showed on the prairie. The labor was long and difficult, attended only by Randall since no midwife could reach them in time. But he was steady and calm, and when at last their son was born, squalling and red-faced and perfect, Rebecca saw tears in his eyes. "What should we name him?" Randall asked, cradling the infant with surprising gentleness for such large, work-worn hands. "I thought perhaps James, after my mother's father," Rebecca said. "He was a good man and it would honor her memory." "James Ashford," Randall tried the name. "I like it. James it is." Those first weeks with a newborn were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. James was a lusty baby with a powerful set of lungs, and there were nights when Rebecca thought she might cry from lack of sleep. But Randall shared the burden, walking the floor with his son, singing the simple songs Rebecca had taught him in a deep, rumbling voice that somehow soothed the baby when nothing else would. As spring bloomed fully across the prairie, Rebecca felt as though she was emerging from a long darkness into light. Her body slowly recovered. The days grew longer and warmer. And most importantly, she began to sing again, not just in the evenings but throughout the day, little lullabies to James as she nursed him or rocked him to sleep. One evening in May, she was on the porch with James asleep in her arms when Randall came back from the south pasture. He sat beside her, and they watched the sun set in comfortable silence. "You ever regret it?" he asked suddenly. "Giving up your singing career, coming out here to the middle of nowhere?" Rebecca thought about Philadelphia, about the cramped rooms and the smoke-filled taverns and the constant struggle. "I never had a career," she said. "I had a survival strategy, This is so much better. You could still have a career here. The church in town would be thrilled to have you sing on Sundays, and there are social events, gatherings where they would pay to hear you. Perhaps someday, Rebecca said, but right now I am content to sing for you and James. That is audience enough. You have given me so much, Randall said. Not just your presence or your work, but hope. This place was just a ranch before, something to work at and build. Now it is a home. You made it that. We made it that, Rebecca corrected. Together. As if on cue, James woke and began to fuss. Rebecca stood to take him inside, but Randall took him instead. Go ahead and sing, he said. I will settle him. I want to hear your voice before the day ends. So Rebecca sang as the stars began to appear overhead, her voice carrying across the prairie. She sang of love and home and the strange, beautiful journey that had brought her here. And inside the house, Randall swayed with their son in his arms and listened to the woman who had arrived with nothing but a song in her heart and had given him everything. The years flowed by like water, each one bringing new challenges and joys. The ranch prospered and they expanded, adding more cattle and horses, hiring additional hands. Rebecca did eventually begin singing at church and at town social gatherings, and her voice became one of the treasures of Enid. People would come from miles around when word spread that she was performing, but she always came home to the ranch, to Randall and their growing family. James was followed by a daughter they named Catherine, then another son they called William. The house was expanded to accommodate them all, new rooms added on as needed. Through it all, through the hard years when drought threatened their livelihood and the good years when they prospered, through the times of sickness and the times of celebration, Rebecca and Randall remained each other's anchors. What had started as an agreement, a practical arrangement between strangers, had become a love story that others in the community spoke of with admiration. On their 10th anniversary, Randall took Rebecca to the spot where he had first taught her to shoot. The fence posts were still there, though weathered by time. I have a gift for you, he said, pulling a folded paper from his coat. Rebecca opened it and found herself looking at a deed. What is this? There is a hall in town, the one where you sing sometimes. It is for sale and I bought it. For you, for me. But why? Because you should have a place that is yours where you can share your gift with as many people as want to hear it. We can fix it up proper, make it a real theater. You could perform regularly, teach music if you wanted, whatever you like. Rebecca looked at the paper, then at her husband. You are giving me a theater. I am giving you the chance to have the career you should have had all along, the one you gave up to come here. I did not give it up, Rebecca said. I traded it for something better. For you, for our family, for this life. But I love you all the more for thinking of this. They did open the theater, and it became a centerpiece of Enid's cultural life. Rebecca performed there monthly, and the shows sold out every time. She also began teaching music to local children, passing on the gift she had been given. But no matter how busy life became, Sunday evenings were sacred. That was when the family gathered on the porch, and Rebecca and Randall would sing together, their voices joined by those of their children as they grew old enough to learn the words. Those evenings, surrounded by the people she loved most, Rebecca would think back to that scared young woman who had stepped off the stagecoach so many years ago. That woman had been searching for security and a future. She had found those things, but so much more besides. She had found a partner who saw her value, who cherished her gift without trying to own it. She had found a home in a wild land that had seemed so foreign at first, but now felt like the only place she could ever belong. And she had found love, the deep, abiding kind that grew stronger with each passing year. The years continued their steady march, bringing changes both welcome and bittersweet. James grew into a tall, serious young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did. Catherine inherited her mother's voice and became the star pupil in Rebecca's music classes. William was the adventurous one, always getting into mischief, always making them laugh. In 1910, when Rebecca was 36 and Randall was 44, they added one more child to their family, a surprise baby they named Sarah. By then, James was 15 and complained good-naturedly about having to help with a baby sister, but Rebecca saw the tenderness in his face when he held her. The children grew and started lives of their own. James married a neighboring rancher's daughter and built his own house on the far edge of the property. Catherine moved to Oklahoma City to study music formally, though she came home often and always sang at her mother's theater when she did. William, restless like his mother had once been, joined the army and sent letters from places that seemed impossibly far away. Through it all, Rebecca and Randall aged together. Gray threaded through their hair. Lines deepened around their eyes from years of squinting into the prairie sun. Their hands grew more gnarled from hard work, but they still fit together perfectly when they walked. The ranch became one of the most successful in the region, known for quality stock and fair dealing. But people knew Randall Ashford as much for being the man who loved Rebecca heartily as for his business acumen. He never missed one of her performances, always sitting in the front row of the theater he had bought for her, watching with the same expression of wonder he had worn the first time he heard her sing behind the ranch house. In the spring of 1918, they celebrated their 20th anniversary. Their children, all grown now, organized a party at the theater. Friends and neighbors came from all over, filling the hall to capacity. There were speeches and well wishes, food and dancing. But the highlight was when Rebecca took the stage, and Randall joined her there for the first time in public. Together, they sang the simple songs they had learned together all those years ago, their voices blending in the way only comes from decades of practice. It was not technically perfect, but it was real and full of emotion, and there was not a dry eye in the house when they finished. That night, alone in their bedroom, Randall held Rebecca close. "Have I told you lately that you are the best decision I ever made?" he asked. "Once or twice," Rebecca teased, "but I never tire of hearing it. When I sent that advertisement for a mail-order bride, I was just looking for someone to share the work. I had no idea I was calling for my soulmate. Nor did I know that answering it would lead me to mine," Rebecca said. "I thought I was just finding security. Instead, I found everything." They were granted several more good years, years of watching grandchildren be born and grow, years of continued work and love and life. The ranch remained their home, expanded now to include James's family in their own house and a cottage where Catherine stayed when she was between engagements in the city. Rebecca continued to sing, her voice aging but somehow growing richer with time. She gave her last public performance at the age of 62, and even then, the theater was packed. She sang all the old favorites, the ballads and hymns that had become her signature, and when Randall joined her on stage for the final song, people stood and applauded for 10 minutes straight. They retired from public life after that, but not from each other. In their 70s, they could still be found walking the property together, Randall pointing out changes and improvements, Rebecca humming melodies that had lived in her heart for decades. The ranch was in James's capable hands now, but they still lived in the original house, the one Randall had built with his own hands so long ago. On a warm evening in late summer of 1939, they sat on the porch as they had done thousands of times before. They were old now, both past 75, but their hands still found each other naturally, fingers intertwining. You remember the day you arrived? Randall asked. How scared you looked stepping off that stage coach. I was terrified, Rebecca admitted. I was coming to marry a complete stranger in a place I had never seen. It was the bravest and most foolish thing I had ever done. And yet here we are. Here we are, Rebecca agreed. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Would you like me to sing? Always, Randall said. So Rebecca sang one more time, her voice now thin and wavering but still true. She sang the song she had made up that first summer, the one about the prairie and the sky and love found in unexpected places. And when she finished, Randall kissed her forehead gently. That is the sound of home, he said. You arrived with a song in your heart and you have been singing it to me ever since. And you gave me reasons to sing forever, Rebecca replied. A home, a family, a love that never wavered. What more could any person ask for? They sat in comfortable silence as the sun painted the western sky in shades of gold and crimson, the same colors that had greeted Rebecca on her first evening at the ranch over 40 years ago. The prairie stretched endlessly before them, and somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed and horses whinnied and life continued its eternal cycle. Inside the house, they could hear voices as family members gathered for Sunday dinner. James and his wife, their 5 children and growing number of grandchildren. Catherine, who had come home for a visit. William, retired from the army and living in town with his family but never missing a Sunday gathering. They are waiting for us, Randall said. Let them wait a moment longer, Rebecca said. I want to remember this, just the two of us watching the sunset like we have done so many times before. It never gets old, Randall agreed. No, Rebecca said softly, it never does. They stayed there until the last rays of sunlight faded and the first stars began to appear. Then, helping each other up with the careful movements of the elderly, they went inside to join their family. The dinner table was crowded and loud with conversation and laughter, multiple generations sharing food and stories. As they ate, someone asked Rebecca to share the story of how she and Randall met. It was a tale that had been told many times before, but the grandchildren never tired of hearing it. Your grandfather sent an advertisement for a mail-order bride, Rebecca began, her eyes twinkling. And I was foolish enough to answer it. Best foolishness I ever encountered, Randall interjected, making everyone laugh. Rebecca told the story of her journey west, of her fears and hopes. She told about their brief wedding ceremony and the awkwardness of those first days. She told about learning to love this land and the man who had brought her here. The grandchildren listened with rapt attention, even though they had heard it before. There was something magical about the tale, about 2 strangers who had become partners and then lovers and finally the foundation of this large, happy family. After dinner, as had become tradition, Rebecca sang. Her voice was not what it once had been, but it still carried emotion and truth. The family gathered around, adding their voices to hers on the choruses, filling the house with music just as she had done since that first summer so long ago. When the evening ended and the family dispersed to their various homes, Rebecca and Randall were left alone once more. They prepared for bed with the efficiency of long practice, each knowing the other's routines so well that words were unnecessary in the darkness of their bedroom, lying side by side as they had for over 4 decades. Rebecca spoke softly. I have had a good life. It is not over yet, Randall said. I know, but I wanted to say it anyway, in case I forget to say it later. You could never forget, Randall said. Your memory is sharper than mine. Maybe. Rebecca shifted closer, fitting herself against his side in the way that had become second nature. But still, I wanted you to know, you gave me everything I ever needed and so much more than I ever dreamed of having. You gave me the same, Randall said. A quiet house became a home full of love and music. An empty life became one worth living. I would do it all again without changing a single moment. Even the parts where I was stubborn and difficult, especially those parts, Randall said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. Those are what made life interesting. They fell asleep like that, together as they had been for so many years, as they would continue to be for the years they had left. Time continued its march, gentler now but inexorable. They celebrated their 45th anniversary, then their 50th. The ranch passed fully to James, but they remained in their house, surrounded by family and memories. Rebecca's voice eventually faded to a whisper, but she still sang in her way, humming melodies that had sustained her through a lifetime. Randall's strength diminished, but he still walked the property when he could, checking on things with the eye of a man who had built something lasting. And always, he found his way back to Rebecca, to the woman who had agreed to marry a stranger and had become the center of his entire world. They grew old together with grace and gratitude, two people who had taken a chance on each other and won the greatest prize of all, a love that lasted a lifetime, a family that thrived, and a legacy that would echo through generations. The story of the mail-order bride who had arrived with a song in her heart and the cowboy who gave her reasons to sing forever became a cherished family tale, passed down to children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. It was a reminder that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is take a chance on love, that sometimes agreements between strangers can become the foundation of something beautiful and lasting. And on quiet evenings on the Oklahoma prairie, when the wind blew just right and the sun painted the sky in gold and crimson, if you listened closely, you could almost hear it still, the sound of Rebecca's voice singing across the years, a testament to love and courage and the life she and Randall had built together from nothing but hope and determination. Their ranch stood as a monument not just to hard work, but to what two people could create when they chose to build together rather than alone. The original house, though expanded and updated over the years, remained at the heart of it all, a symbol of where everything had begun. And in the end, that was what mattered most, not the size of the ranch or the fame of Rebecca's voice, but the simple fact that two lonely people had found each other across the distance and the years, and had chosen, every single day, to continue building a life together. They had faced dangers and hardships, joys and sorrows, and through it all, they had remained constant to each other. Rebecca and Randall lived out their days in the home they had made together, surrounded by love and family. Their story a living proof that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with a single brave decision and a heart open to possibility. And every evening until their final days, as the sun set over the Oklahoma prairie, you could find them together, watching the sky change colors and remembering all the moments, big and small, that had made up their extraordinary ordinary life, forever grateful for the day a mail-order bride with a song in her heart met a cowboy who gave her every reason to keep singing.